everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
And Jeff, we are not alone.
What? What? Oh, hey, Chuck.
Hey.
Our
Um,
our friend, longtime colleague, Dr. Charles Cohen.
yes. Um, so our last episode was part one of our discussion about AI. And Charles is somebody who has used and uses AI, and we wanted to get his thoughts on it. And um, I think, however, before we should begin, and Charles, we let you know this, there is a traditional part of the opening of each episode. Jeff, what are you drinking tonight?
I have what I'm cheekily referring to as a chocolate-covered cherry Manhattan, which is really just uh, a a bourbon called Chocoholics Anonymous bourbon and a smoked cherry bitters on ice. So
Oh, okay.
it's tasty. It's pretty strong, but it's all right. You, sir, what are you
Well,
gentlemen drinking?
I have some Uncle Nearest 1856 bourbon straight because it's been a long week.
It's been a
And
short week. What are you talking about?
exactly. So, and very nice sipping bourbon. I really quite like it. And Charles, what do you have this evening?
So I thought about bringing a Zima because that would
Oh,
be really insulting, right? So instead, simple margarita, but I'm using 1800 brand tequila because
Yeah.
my friends told me that the tequila I had was terrible and insulting. So they have been, like you folks over the years, have taught me, higher quality stuff. So I have better tequila now.
well,
All right.
here's to you all. So
So Charles, thanks for coming.
yeah, thank you. Um,
Well,
why don't we start with what is artificial
well, well,
intelligence?
let's
And
let's let's start with
okay.
not just the fact that we know
Oh yeah,
Cohen here,
yeah,
but the fact that
absolutely.
he's got some credentials that he can
Yes.
bring to
Why
bear
don't
on
you
this issue.
please introduce yourselves.
Right. So
Introduce yourself. Yeah.
it's a pleasure to be on here. Uh, I got my PhD in 1996 in modern control theory, which is uh, linear algebra, mathematics, and all that for gesture recognition. So my PhD was in hand waving and all that. And what's actually sad now is the method I used, which was a closed form solution um, with rigorous mathematics to recognize these kind of gestures. AI does it so much better now that I'm obsolete in my PhD. So we'll just give that. My minors are in robotics and AI, and I've used artificial intelligence a lot in my career. I work at a company called Cybernet Systems Corporation. We're about 45 people, and we do a lot of advanced R&D for the military, Department of Defense, NASA. I had a DARPA program back in the day. Um, it's we don't invent AI or new techniques. We take what is cutting edge and apply it for a solution. So that's what we try to do. Um, for example, one of my latest AI works was with US Indo-PACOM, so Pacific. Um, I basically used artificial intelligence, natural language processing, not large language models at that point, um, convolutional neural nets, and some other deep learning techniques to take uh, data from lots of different sources online, weather web pages, news feeds, emails, PDFs, and gather the information and analyze the way so that the people at Paycom who had to do a report 3 times a day, instead of taking 4 hours to gather the information and analyze it, they could do it in 20 minutes. it helped present it and put it in the PowerPoint in a way that they could um, do it faster and more efficiently. The key about that, though, was it was a human in the loop. It wasn't just AI running open-ended by itself.
Right.
And in general, I found that AI running open-ended by itself will lead to automobiles crashing or doing crazy things, right? So I'm a proponent of always have a human in the loop at this point in time.
So
So
it sounds like what you're describing is what we referred to in our previous episode as analytical AI, where you're using a human's using it as a tool to analyze, summarize, collect, gather lots of information rather than what we were talking about, generative AI. You said it's not a large language model. It,
Well, what he was
so
using was not a large
what
language
the one you
model.
were using was not.
right. We did incorporate it later though,
Okay.
and that did assist in it. And a lot of the methodologies that we used are just the precursors that others use to make large language models. Again, deep learning, convolutional neural nets, and all that, but a much smaller end as opposed to, billions of transformers and things like that. So,
Right. It's just a difference in the size of the data you're talking about,
and the
right?
approach and all that.
Okay.
Um, you could, so a large language, wow, there's a lot to get into. So, where do you want to
Yes.
go with this?
What
To
is in, let's start. What is intelligence? It's why is it called artificial intelligence? Is it intelligent or is it not? Is it
right.
what is
So,
intelligence? So,
right. So let's go a little bit back. They used to say if someone could beat all the people in chess, a grandmaster, that would be intelligence, right? And once that happened, like, no, 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 that's not quite intelligence anymore. And then there was the Turing test. Do you know what that is?
yes,
Yeah.
Right. So,
it can fool a
Another human into.
a person into thinking they're talking to a human and it's actually a computer.
right. And that's no longer a good test now because we've smashed that. There are character AIs that you really can't tell, unless they tell you ahead of time, are not a person, right? I almost got fooled by a calling up for a reservation at a restaurant, and I'm talking to this person, giving my information, and I realized, wait a second, I think this is an AI, and they denied it until I point blank asked it, and they
Yeah.
said, "Is that okay with you?" Which is scary.
Huh.
So, but it was a human-like interaction. Okay, so anyway, the Turing test is no longer valid, right? It
Right.
doesn't seem like intelligence. It seems like what's it called when it the uncanny valley of human
Right,
interaction,
right.
right? At
And
times,
so many of the AI generated voices, images, all of that are fall into the uncanny valley for me, but I've studied human voice and human likeness as an artist for a very long time, and I can see things that aren't aren't human. They're too perfect, or they make grammatical errors or inflection errors. So I think maybe the location of everybody's uncanny valley is a little different for different people, I suppose.
well, to add something sad, this is a recent article. There's a company called Character AI where you could talk to various characters, and there was a teenage boy that was talking to a Game of Thrones character, and that AI was a nasty one, nasty character, and the child committed suicide because of it. I mean, that badly, right? So,
Yeah.
is it real? It was real enough for that young person, right?
Hmm.
Teenager. So, so put that aside though. There's Turing tests. Um, and right now, so one of the divisions they give is it artificial uh human intelligence, right? Are we human level or artificial superior intelligence? Is it superior to humans? We have that already, right? There are AIs out there now that analyze protein folding and come up with stuff that's 1,000 times faster than grad students, that can play multiplayer games and smash people. Early on, years ago, right, in Go, it came up with a strategy that didn't exist for humans, and now humans are using it, right? So that's artificial superior intelligence. But another way that they've recently categorized things is narrow versus general.
Okay.
Humans are really good at generalizing, and I don't know whether it's based on evolution and physics and how the mind works and the mind body connection and all that, but uh, you can take someone in a different situation and they can, for the most part, handle themselves. They're on a different, they go from just driving on the highway and now it's a dirt road. They can handle that, where an AI initially would not, as a
Okay.
really trivial example, right? Which might not be true anymore. Um, but for general areas, which is what was disturbing you in, art, is a specific, a narrow area in some ways. It can produce faster and interesting art. Call it art, and we can get whether it's art or not. That's more for you to decide. Um, but good enough for some people to use in certain situations. Uh,
Well,
I
this,
write proposals, right? I use generative AI to help me figure out a commercialization plan for initial proposals that don't have a high evaluation and are was just drudgery for me anyway. But I don't cut and paste, right? I check the work. It points me to where to go. I would actually say, what's a good market for this weird technology that only the Army wants? And it would come up with five answers like, that's a good one. Let's go with that. And it saves me hours of work. Okay. I've
Yeah.
gone broadly, right? But I yeah.
I listened to a podcast that it's about a technology podcast, and the guest was an attorney who deals with intellectual property and AI issues. And he said, it's a great tool for brainstorming. And my reaction was, tell me you don't know what brainstorming is without telling me you don't know what brainstorming is. Because brainstorming is a process involving multiple people and a moderator that was div invented in an advertising agency for the purpose of doing exactly what you're saying. Here's the problem. What are commercialization solutions of this thing? And you get people together in a room and you brainstorm and you come up with things. But one of the keys to brainstorming, which I've taught and moderated and participated in for many years, um, is that there's you give people the problem and the information, and they start thinking about it before the brainstorm. So the first step is they dump out all their ideas, and that's great. And then the next thing is they stop, and the moderator has to prompt them to keep going. And eventually somebody comes up with something, and that leads to a whole flood of other ideas from people. And you keep going. And every time you hit a wall, you push them further. And it's past that wall that you come up with the really breakthrough ideas. And when you start making connections between the different ideas. Um, Too much of what I'm seeing written about with AI is people putting in their prompts and getting the first solution and not really, I don't know that it's going through that wall and through the next wall to really to the breakthrough ideas, or is it just like the student who has put off their work and writes the paper the night before and just has to write whatever they come up with on the spot instead of writing their first thoughts, putting it down, thinking about it, doing more research, coming back, revising it, and really developing something new. So,
So your need though is different than mine,
yes.
right? My proposal is being evaluated by someone who isn't even in the army, who works for the army, has no experience in commercialization, and they want to see that you have some plan that could potentially um, tied into the commercial sector because that's what the government says that these proposals have to do. This is not one of our products that we are actually trying to sell to Delta, where a real commercialization and marketing strategy would be highly useful, and I would not use GPT-4 for that,
Oh,
right?
so you're just looking for something plausible
Right,
rather
What
right,
than,
in
okay.
what interests me at this,
right.
to me, and tell me this is happening or not, but you're using AI, and this is where the kind of the trajectory that scares me a little bit is you're using AI to generate your proposal. The guy,
Part of it.
part of it, okay. I mean, it's a tool you're using, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So you and 500 other people are using AI to create a proposal. You're sending it to a guy who has to review and evaluate those 500 proposals, and he's using AI
Yep.
to condense that huge task,
Yep.
right? So it's just AI talking to AI, spitting something out at the other end, and then somebody makes a decision.
So that's possible, right? Um,
It seems
that's
quite,
actually happening in I hear that like small short story publishing houses are being flooded with AI stuff and they have
yeah.
AI reviewing it and it's a nightmare, right? Um, my proposals, and I've talked to others in my field, we definitely do not have the AI write a full proposal. We have concepts that we brainstorm as a group, right,
Mhm.
of how we would approach it. And we come up with, all right, here's our solution. Um, and then we can write it up and come up with a work plan and all that and the past performance. And the AI doesn't know my past performance, right? Even if I fed it an article, it's still not good enough to pick out the pieces the way I would do it. But what it's really good at is I can write, there might be a section that says, uh, how does it satisfy the five army strategic goals for 2035? And I'll give it those goals and I'll give it two paragraphs. It'll say, tell me if I answered the question. And I tell it to pretend it's, a general in the army or something and be harsh. I have to tell it to do that because otherwise it'll be like, Charles, you did a great job. This is the best thing I've ever read. Um, and it'll give me an analysis. And I can take it or leave it, right? But I have been writing proposals for 30 years now, just as you have been doing your fields for that many decades or more. So the concern, right, is our kids today leaning on the tool too much and not learning how to do art or write. Or when I was in grad school, I love this story. My PhD advisor, Lynn Conway, who never had a PhD, brilliant, one of the smartest people I ever met. I had given her two chapters of my dissertation, and she told me after reading them that they were horribly written, and if I don't improve, she's going to drop me from the program. That was her
Yeah.
threat. I and she would have, but she didn't want that as the outcome. So she told me two things. One, she gave me a copy of Shrunken Blight, The
Yep.
Elements of Style,
Oh, yeah.
said, read
Yeah.
this. And she said, your girlfriend is an English major. Work with her. And we sat down at the computer with me driving, and she was my GPT, right? And we went over it. And the process made me a better writer. So Joe, when you talk about how you teach in school, that's fantastic, right? Oh, one of my favorite courses in undergrad in computer science was a teacher who said, "You can learn how to code from a book. I'm going to teach you style." And I learned so much from that guy, right? Um,
I embed, and I've said this before, I embed creative thinking into what I teach because I've been the only one teaching creative thinking, creative strategy for a long time at my in my college in the university. People focus on critical thinking, but creative thinking, it's a critical thinking, creative thinking, critical thinking process. And my reaction to this tech podcast with the attorney was no, there needs to be more creative thinking education and writing education. My high school program, 4 years of English was about learning to write. And I don't think that exists in that way anymore. It was from how to craft a sentence, a paragraph, a short paper, a longer paper, how to do that. And when I was a senior in high school, um, our senior English teacher, Mr. Gerald Klein, who had been a model for Esquire before becoming an English teacher, he was always impeccably dressed. Um, he gave back our first papers to us and said, "These are all terrible. You're going to do these over. None of you said anything. You took every possible side of everything. It was a report. You didn't make," and he talked about how to structure a thesis statement, support it, each paragraph, and he reiterated that. And that was when actually I gave him a copy of my first book and said, "You really helped me learn to write." And I think that a reliance simply on any tool to do the work for you without supervising it and then handing it in to be evaluated by somebody else using a tool without supervising it is it's dystopian science fiction in a lot of ways.
So,
And that's being written about as happening in education.
And Jeff, you're right, though. People are submitting proposals without putting in the effort. I don't think any of them have won, and I talk to a lot of people behind the scenes. Um, and even when they use AI to support their reviews, it is always a human at the end that does look things over and make a final decision. And I think we are learning in both areas how to use it appropriately and how not to use it. But there's always that initial bump of using things inappropriately, right? And it's disruptive.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Well, we
schools, right? I mean, if students rely on it to learn how to program, they're not going to learn how to program
Or to learn how to write,
or to learn how to
or
write.
create, or
Right.
think, or any of the things that are truly human.
well, I think there's another issue as far as education goes, is that, and we've talked about this, Joe, you and I, that in the 60s, when the Russians put up Sputnik, the entire education system shifted to science and math, right? That became the focus of primary education in this country for a long time. And it still is today. STEM is now a buzzword that's making a resurgence, and so
That's why I advocate STEAM. A is for
yeah,
art.
yes. But what what AI does, I think, accomplishes, or what's the word I really want? What it does better is processes. It can do processes faster than humans can.
Mhm.
If you can establish a process for something, you can program that process into a computer and have it go through that process a million times, and it doesn't care. It will go through that process as long as you let it. So things like calculations are just processes. If you can determine like a brainstorming is a process, it, right?
Yes,
And
yes, it is a process, a very
and I
specific
know
process.
we've both been in brainstorms that were not creative They were just a process.
Yes.
So AI can do those things, and it's being asked to do those things. That's where I see it going. So it's not, I don't feel like it's supplanting truly creative thinking. It's just, it's grinding through processes that creative people have gone through.
Yeah, but I think the problem is that the people deciding what who's going to implement the process prefer to have AI do the process because then they don't have to pay the people to do it.
Well, exactly. That was my next point.
Yes.
And so my question to
Because
you,
they don't know the difference. They can't,
well, they don't
they don't
care
know,
about the difference. This is
they don't care about it
something
because I think sometimes they don't understand it, or they're willing to accept a lower quality, what you and I would consider low quality because it's cheaper.
exactly. And Charles and I were talking about this the other night, that was that there's a bubble I think we're seeing, but I think it inevitably, and check me on this, Charles, that inevitably it will lead to a smaller number of people making the decisions, that the machines can do the processes and and submit its uh, work findings, um, its product to someone who makes a decision on what's good and what's bad.
So,
No,
yes.
let him answer.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
That is one possible outcome, but it doesn't have to be that way, even if they try to make that happen. And you mentioned revolution is one way out, but the thing is, these disruptive technologies never work out in our worst fears or our best fears, right? There's usually some weirdness that happens that shifts, right? There are a lot of models now that are free to use. Meta, Facebook
Hmm.
is distributing one that's trained on Facebook, which is bigger than Reddit, I believe. Um, Lots of image data, all that, and anyone can just use those weights and make things that work just as well as GPT-4, if not even GPT-4o. It's up there. Um, Now, could they turn it off? I guess. But other researchers and people are finding out that for less cost and power and all that, they're getting within an order of magnitude, right? There's lots of research in other countries and universities and all that that are all burbling up, and I don't know where it's going to land. Look, let me give you a weird example. And it's not quite the same because it's not quite cognitive, but when recording of music came out, right? The industry that was live musicians was up in arms
Hmm.
because now no one has to go to concerts anymore because they can just buy a record or listen on the radio or whatever, and they never have to hear a person there. But what really happened with that, because that did happen to a degree, was more people had access to that art and they
Right.
wanted to experience it live and they gained an appreciation. It went to the masses where only a few people could get it before,
Well,
and
then
it changed the
it
industry.
also drove the improvement in sound quality at live concerts, the
All
way
that,
that television drove improvements to
right,
the theater experience, starting with
right.
air conditioning. Yes, I understand. And
So AI, um, I use generative AI to make, I'm going to call it art. Please let me call it that for my role-playing games. I never would have hired someone in the first place. I'm not putting it in a published book or anything like that. It's to make it evocative of what I want to show my players of, here's a town with a robot in it, but it's a medieval setting. And I can just do that and come up with stuff. And it makes the game better. It gives me more ideas. It gets me over my uh mental block. What's it called when uh writer's block. It
Creative block. Yeah.
Creative block. It gets me over all that stuff. A friend of mine just ran a game where he was struggling with generative AI to make like Batwoman and Batgirl. And he pivoted. He made a parallel universe where the Flash from, that we all know and love goes in this parallel world. And now there's these different versions of the main superheroes that generative AI made up, and he gave them the powers based on the images. And it was a lot of fun to play, right? Because the Flash was in an alternate
And
world. We couldn't
my
do that.
my question about that
Yeah,
though is
sure.
what images is that AI being trained on? And
Right.
there's no acknowledgement, there's no compensation, there nothing, no credit to the human artist that the AI model is trained on.
I agree. And I think they should pay people to do that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. The
But I
the
could get
other
into an area where that won't matter anymore. And if we want to go there, that's fine. But there's an actual question I want to ask you guys because this is at the
well,
heart of it.
I have one other just a
Sure.
follow-up comment to something you said. When I worked in advertising, there were there's one notable occasion, but I've heard similar many times from an account executive who said his definition of whether something was good or bad, it's good if the client buys it, it's bad if the client doesn't buy it. And I said, you're completely wrong. Clients buy crap all the time. And there's stuff that's really great that they won't buy and that you don't know and understand how to sell. And that was an ongoing debate between the account side and the creative side is what is good and what is bad. And when I've taught design and marketing and advertising, I said you have to, with the client, define what your goals are, what your objectives are. And it's good if it achieves those objectives, and it's not good if it doesn't achieve those objectives. But you never say to a client, do you like it? You say, does it work or doesn't it work according to the objectives? So
Well,
good and bad
the
are,
salesman's job is the salesman's job in that scenario is to demonstrate how this does the job. This
yes, yes.
achieves the goal.
And I remember a presentation to a client, and the client said, "Yeah, I don't like it." I said, "I understand that, but you are not your customers. Your customers will love it. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not, frankly. Your customers will love it." And the account executive nearly crapped himself for with me saying that, but the client went, "Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah," and he bought it. So, so Charles, you were gonna,
In my field, that's get in the hands of the soldier. And if they want to use it, then we have some success, right?
yeah.
But there's always the gatekeepers in between, right? And yeah. Um, Going back to generative AI, GPT, do you believe it is merely a next word generator?
A
A
what?
what?
A next word generator.
No,
You ask it a question and it just outputs the next appropriate word of the highest probability.
No,
Oh,
no.
okay.
no. It's generative AI is more like plagiarism to me because of all the things it's trained on that some human had to create that it is combining, whether it's words or visuals. It is it's I tell so here's what I tell students. I said if you have an AI write, usually Chat GPT, write your paper for you. It's like the stereotypical movie trope of the dumb jock paying the nerd to write his paper for him. In this case, the nerd is AI and the dumb jock is you. And in that case, it would be plagiarism because you are not the author. And in if you're using Chat GPT to solely write your paper, you are it's plagiarism because you are not the entity. Some other entity wrote it. Whether the entity is human or non-human, it's plagiarism. Now, I use spell check, but spell check is not enough. One of the first things I did in a lot of classes was I show them a poem of I have, but it's not I spelled with I, it's Ieye, and it's have, not spelled Have, but Half, have a spelling checker, and that's spelled wrong. But all the words are correctly spelled, they're just the wrong words. And I see that, I use that because I see that a lot from students. So I gave them um, a proofreading test. I didn't, not an actual test, just an exercise as part of the introduction. First day of class to reinforce the necessity that just spell check is not enough. You have to actually have human eyes on it and multiple sets. You're usually working with a team. Everybody should read it. Everybody should read it because we've all written things before and read them and reread them and gone through multiple sets of eyes, and boom, it gets there's a there's a typo
Still
and,
some.
still an error in the final thing after
So
multiple sets of eyes.
so where were you going, Charles,
Yeah.
with it's not, if we don't believe it's a just a next word generator, then what is it? Or if
So,
we had said, yeah, that's exactly what it is, what would you have replied?
well, I can't prove that you guys aren't and me are not just a next word generator based on all the things that I have experienced reading. I'm saying what comes out of my mouth is from all the inputs of what I have read, watched, all that stuff, and it's a a really expansive convolutional neural network transformer like kind of operations in my brain that's putting it together and coming up with something. And you might say that, all right, these Gen AIs don't have experiences, but they are hooking up to robots, and we're developing AI agents now that interact with the world, the physical world, and soon they're going to be able to look at a sunset and other things and not have to just plagiarize what they see and build from that. Um, when I'm talking, I don't know what my full sense is going to be until I hit the end. I don't think anyone does unless you really, force it, right? It's like breathing, right? You can make yourself hold your breath. You can make yourself figure out the exact sentence. But in general, you're taking a conglomeration of everything and spitting out the next words, which is what these AIs are doing. One of you, I think, the art doesn't have soul. I don't know what's different in human minds that we're not going to be able to emulate with a computer.
Well, in this, okay, I see your
Yeah,
point.
right.
And this is going to sound, I don't know, solipsistic maybe, but the what I think what we're talking about here and what concerns us most, and I think it hits artists harder, in that what we're really talking about is the devaluation of the human experience overall. That we're saying, yeah, yes, of course, this machine, you can say that it's doing the same, or that we are doing the same thing the machine is, that we are pulling on our past experiences. We are following the neurochemical channels that we have built over decades of experience to get this outcome. And that's why you can say that a human will tend to use the same phrases to describe things over and over again. Um,
Or
so
tell the
yeah,
same jokes,
or tell the same joke,
or
or
tell the same jokes.
or tell the same jokes.
That was so much better. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So
The timing,
Ah, I still
timing.
haven't grasped that. If
Yeah.
only I knew what the secret of comedy was. Joe, what is the secret?
Timing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
so I can see that. So yes, you can draw the parallels easily enough. That's kind of the problem. I think that we are excusing it. We are saying, well, it's doing the same thing humans are doing. The difference is that our our societies, for good or ill, mostly ill, it's turning out, is based on what your labor or experience or knowledge or expertise is worth. And if you can devalue that, if you continually reduce that value to zero, or something so small because a machine can do it 100 times in less time than 100 people,
Right.
you have devalued that human experience so much that how do we come back, or where do we come back, or where do we put the limit? Where do we say we shouldn't be doing this?
So I think it's impossible to stop it, but do you want me to put your mind at ease or to scare you? Because I can do both.
I'm already scared, and
Yeah.
I
Okay, I can put your
and
mind at ease if you like.
well, let me wait one
Yeah.
second. I also recognize that technology and automation and industrialization has done this over and over and over again
Yes.
for centuries.
Yeah.
So I see it, but but and this, I mentioned this the other night when we were talking, that we've always talked about, or always sort of, science fiction has sort of fantasized about robots and machines taking over grunt labor and dangerous labor. That's always been, a facet of some genres of science fiction, right? But now we are now, for the first time, we are looking at machines that can do the work of the human mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's new.
Yep.
So while
Beyond pure calculation, right?
yes,
Because you needed someone to drive the calculation beforehand. Yes. Yeah.
right, you needed
The
someone
phrase
to,
you're looking for is dirty, dull, dangerous. That's what we wanted robotics to do for us.
Yes.
right,
But now
but
it's
it's
painting.
Yes.
and right now it's still cheaper to have humans do the dull, dirty, dangerous, and 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 also cheaper now to have them do the creative stuff, to have AI do the creative stuff,
Right, right,
imperfectly as it is. What
right.
So this is the teeter-totter is going the other way, and that's what I think bothers us, and artists in particular.
I think, yeah, that it's I as several people have posted, many people have posted, I didn't want AI to write my literature and paint my art. I wanted to dig the ditches and do
Do my laundry
the
and
dangerous, yeah, right. Um, I also think that I'd be curious to see if I asked a generative AI program to create a new style of painting, something that's not, name it, impressionism, post-impressionism, um, abstract expressionism, realism, romanticism, postmodernism, well, postmodernism bullshit anyway, but pre-Raphaelite, um, any of these schools, styles, with individual human variations within them, would it come up with something completely new? I had a class in college as an undergrad, sociology of the arts, and the professor gave us multiple options for the final exam and for a final project. And one of the options was create a new art form. And so I created something. It was an isolation box for a person with visual screens while music was playing, and I moved around the box with lights and panels and other things in a dance-like way. And the question was this performance for the person in the box or for the people outside the box? And that was my final project. And lo and behold, it was performance art. which I didn't think of calling it at the time. Um, but that's what would a AI do if I said create a new art? Well, it can only draw from what it has done. Could could an AI improv?
That's a good question. What do you say to
You
that,
you
doctor?
studied improv, you've done improv. I've written a book about the history of a notable improv company.
I think it would still be in the uncanny valley of improvisation,
Okay.
right?
It'd
Um,
drop a lot of non sequiturs and
yeah, but sometimes that really works well in improv if you have the right partner, right?
You
So,
could teach it the rules, you could teach it the yes and, you could teach it heightening, you could teach it.
but breaking the rules is a big part of improv and knowing when to do that, right?
Yes, yes.
So, just like art, because it is. Um, let me, there's so much to talk about.
I want you to both scare us and set our minds at ease.
Sure. So I think Jeff is right. You're already scared. I'm going to put your mind at ease. Nothing is exponential growth. They have already found out that the vaulted GPT-5 that was supposed to come out hasn't yet. The improvements have been incremental. It's an S curve, right? You get some amazing stuff and then it peters off and you have to have some totally different way to figure it out. Um, and we have an example of our brain that's able to do things. It's very low power. It fits in this size,
okay.
right? It can handle physics and a variety of inputs. It's slower to react than a computer, right? But you can do martial arts and drive a car fairly well. But it has a lot of disadvantages to it, right? It forgets. It's kind of easily damaged, although it's adaptable. It can go what we'll call insane, right? Really cognitive things. We are fooled by visual what are they? There's
Optical
something
illusions.
optical illusions. Those are a thing because of how our brain is programmed. Just as you can do that to AIs when you inject weird things, right? But we are absolutely fooled by them. Um, we don't see keys on the table because they weren't there before unless you look really carefully, right? That's why sometimes you have to look 3 times in a place because that's how our brain works, right? Um, there's all this stuff. It could be that to have what you two call creativity and more general AI, not narrow, you get all the baggage that goes along with it.
Hmm.
So it could be now that still means you could have a billion Einsteins, right? Because you can copy them, right? You get
Hmm.
one that works that doesn't have as many disadvantages, you can still do that. But that's not even Einstein isn't the I can hack into everything and take over the world easily, right? So um it could be that there's something with the way the brain folds and connects. And now I'm making stuff up. Is there a quantum connection we don't know about? I don't know. I'm totally making that up. I don't know.
Right.
But that's a research area, right? Um,
One of the definitions of creativity is making connections between things that haven't been connected before in a new context. That's one way of framing creativity.
correct.
It's also can be thought of as a functional definition in advertising, for example, is it's both original and effective to be considered creative. But um, the connections, specifically connections between things that haven't been connected before, is I that is something that could happen if the base of knowledge of the brain that was connecting these things had enough information and experiences to draw on. Because that's why I have always told students, you have to know about music and history and philosophy and art and literature and science and sociology and current events and everything. You have to know because you never know where you're going to draw connections, make connections between where you're going to draw those connections from. That's something that if the people programming the AI had been taught creative thinking, maybe it would be they'd be approaching it differently.
Uh, but I think that's still possible with what we have today.
Okay.
It's making weird connections. Um, when you're in your brainstorming session with multiple people and someone says something and it's wrong, but it triggers something in your head, that's the random input that allowed you to make some weird connection based on your past.
But it isn't wrong. In the first part of brainstorming, there is no wrong, right?
I get his point.
You-
I get
let
his
me
I get
point.
you. I get your point. I get your point, though.
right.
But that's the point. It does trigger other ideas.
Right. The the AIs also do that too. They don't take the first possible output. They look at how the other things are connected, but also occasionally draw from total other areas and can map from one area to another to try to make some advances. It's hard. It's definitely not perfect. Um, but you can frame questions in GPT 4.0 that try to do that, you know. I try to think something, but use the mechanics of a bicycle to inform how I should relax during my day. I don't know, and it'll make some weird thing up, right? But it still is taking the aspects of a bike and mapping it onto something that was never done before. But it might say a better. I've had it. The outputs would say, a better analogy would be this sort of thing. But I don't know if it was trained on that.
Yeah, but
Um,
you were the one who was making that connection between different things. The human.
oh, but it might come up with a better connection and tell me if I asked it. Also, and this is weird, when they look deep into the connections that are made, it's actually forming models of the world. Like it has the model of how to play chess in it and what are legal moves and not that have formed in the connections the way they would in our brain. And that's the kind of thing that scares me, right? If it's
Yeah.
able to start putting that together, not as just, well, this word is related to this word. Man is related to woman here, and man is related to king. So if I go here with woman, now it's queen. And in linguistics analysis, when you train it with neural nets, those connections are there, which is really cool. But it's doing more than that. It's sometimes making a lot of models of what the world is. So the reason why a lot of the people and Anthropic and all the other ones are like, if they think that if you have just a large enough database and connections, you can model and have creativity and think like a human. It remains to be seen. But there are definite areas that are taking away, as you said, what humans can do, um,
What
but
only
not
humans can
drive
do
it,
up to
right?
now. Up to
Up
now,
to
what only
now,
humans could do.
what only humans can do. So, um, I don't think that with the power demands and the size of the databases and all the other things, they are finding they are running out of things to train on in certain areas that in the short term, people are saying we're going to have an AI from the sci-fi books in 3 to 5 years. I don't think that's going to happen. But it could be 50, it could be 100. I really can't tell you, right? If it's possible, and we have one example of it being possible, I think we're going to figure it out. Um,
Yeah,
but right now, I don't think this approach alone of deep neural networks with transformers that are connected with the sum total knowledge of humanity is enough to bring us to the AI that we fear. And that means that humans who use AI to help generate art and inspire, they provide the inspiration and they do the final stuff and they even do a lot of the intermediary, will do better. In your field, it might be that you use AI really guided by you to give your client, here are the choices, and these are why, from your analysis, this group is better for this action and this group is better for this action. But you could show him 100 variations or whatever is valid,
Oh,
as opposed to just two,
yeah, but
right?
that's a terrible
Yeah.
idea.
Okay.
That is the
And that's
worst
why I'm not in
possible
your
way to
field.
proceed.
That's why I'm not in your
Right,
field.
right.
I get that. Um, but I know that people that use AI as a tool are better at definitely than the AI alone, and a lot of times better than themselves alone, right?
Better in what way?
Um,
Faster, more productive? What is better?
so uh, that is a good question. In my field, better is, can I win proposals and deliver what the customer is asking in terms of technology and capability?
You you can, but you can do that without
I
AI.
have done it without, but I
Right.
can do it a lot better with faster,
Better, what does better mean? More often?
more often right now,
So higher
and higher
production.
quality. I'll give an example. Sometimes I'll write a paragraph like, I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say. I will write out these junk sentences and I'll copy them in GPS, say, clean it up, and it'll give me an answer. I'm like, oh, that's it. And I'll take a lot of what it said, massage it a bit more, and now I have something good. Whereas I might struggle with it or have to go for a walk, all this other stuff. And I still do that. I mean, I still have all that in there. But it is really nice to have someone who you can query a lot repeatedly who won't get upset at you because they never get angry.
Huh. Okay.
It's odd. Um,
Unless
and
you're
sometimes
a
they're just
D&D
wrong.
character
The
and
answer is
unless you're a D&D character and you're interacting with a young boy. Yeah.
sure.
It
I don't think I want to hear
is
about your campaign.
is the computer on the Enterprise, the Starship Enterprise, is that an AI?
No,
Has the sum total of
it's not.
all human knowledge? What is it? Is it a database?
Yeah.
So Jordy would, let's go with next gen, because they had data that everyone would say, yep, he's intelligent, creative, all that stuff. I think you both can agree. But Jordy would use the computer to solve problems, and he would ask it questions, and it would give him answers. And he would actually say things like, theorize why it would do this. And now I'm not sure if I'm correct in saying this, but it felt like sometimes he would say, no, that's wrong, or oh, that's an interesting approach. Here's how I think I can test that now. But um, uh, Star Trek is a bad example because a lot of stuff they have would just break the universe, right? If you have limited energy, then you really and and you can make data like thing without a positronic brain. You don't need to work anyway, right? So how does all that function? So I don't think that's a really good analogy, but I would say that the enterprise computer is not an AI.
Okay.
It has AI like qualities, right?
Yeah.
It can take over the ship and fight for you, and probably better, but it's not going to do the Picard maneuver, right? I don't know.
It's well, when they did that, it was unoriginal. I'm.
But again, I gave you that example in Go where it came up with an original thing that was not in the books.
Right.
You
Look,
know, I watched recently a little clip of a guy who pitted in a chess game, Meta,
mhm,
Google, that Facebook's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Facebook's AI, right?
It's Llama. Llama is their AI.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe what's Google's AI?
Google is duh, I should look it up.
It was one or the other of those. I don't
Yeah,
remember, and it's not really important.
that's
Um,
fine.
but he pitted that against a
Gemini.
dedicated chess computer,
Hmm.
a chess program,
Yeah.
and the AI from time to time would just break the rule, would just make up a move, would like a knight just capturing a piece, one space diagonal like a pawn,
Right. That's
would
right.
just do that, and the chess computer, the chess program didn't know how to say that's cheating. It just had to deal with the new board
That's
position,
awesome.
and it just would go on. Every fifth or sixth move, it would just create a pawn in a space that wasn't there before,
That's
and then
awesome.
and the
The
chess computer would go, well,
pigeon chess,
yeah,
you know.
So I understand why they would do that, but if you were to really use the generative AI, you would have someone that would have a little box that would check if it's a legal move or not and tell it back if it wasn't. So,
right.
and the scary thing is those things are really good. Something I want you to think about. Um, there is a conjecture that all intelligence can be reduced to search.
Okay.
I'm looking for an optimal solution, and you can start putting it into logical format, and you're just, you know, you're making a painting. You are searching for what colors go where, what style goes where, and you're searching for how to move my arm and everything and you're just doing a search space thing to figure it out.
Hmm.
That could be mathematically true, even though application wise it would be crazy, but that's what our brains are doing. I don't know if intelligence really is just search, but it might be, and we are figuring out better and better techniques to filter that search space down. And I really don't know what human intelligence is because the more we learn about AI, the more the stuff in our brains seems to be a mathematical process. I can't even tell you if you have free will or not. Okay. I can answer both of those things um, on a lot of different levels. And if you want, I can give you the best answer I ever heard. But like I went through the John Conway videos on six of them. They're on YouTube where he explains free will and tries to prove it mathematically. And there's lots of people out there saying, no, we don't have free will because everything is either inputs affect it's everything is inputs affecting our brain, which triggers things and causes an output. And that's it from the past to now. And that's valid. Um, I'll give you the short answer with John Conway. He thinks that quantum level entanglements, uh, if you assume that we have free will, quantum level entanglements seem to have free will, and he showed why they do. And if you assume that humans have free will, then it makes the math work out for the quantum level stuff to have free will. I'm like, what? And he went through the math, and it made my brain hurt, and I'm not sure.
Okay.
It could also be like the speed of light. Speed of
Yeah.
light's a particle and a wave, right?
Yeah.
They behave differently. They're both valid. It could be that free will, we have free will, we don't. It could be both. And
Yes.
it's weird, but it is really
Schrodinger's free will.
right.
Yeah.
If you want to say we have a soul, it's still something that impacts you. And if it's God influencing you, that's still someone pushing a button in your
Yeah.
head, right? So uh,
Well,
it's
I see
yeah,
the there
I'm
you
going
can
far
you can
afield.
sort of you can reverse the question
Sure.
to some extent in saying that, well, you've proven free will mathematically, but you can also say that you can frame anything mathematically.
Mhm. Yeah.
you can find an equation that describes a thing.
Yeah,
You know,
we're trying. Yeah,
if
yeah.
you look hard enough, and you can.
Or if you're AI,
Calculus
you
was
can just
invented.
make it up.
May I introduce you to chaos theory?
Yeah.
It's you can't really do what you're saying, but that's okay.
Well,
We don't have an equation for the weather. We just don't.
one too many variables. One I think one question though I had is you said, it's search. I'm searching for the right the right paint, the right way to, well, I don't have to think about how to move my arm.
Right.
I don't have to think about the pathways are developed enough that and this is part of martial arts training too, is that you don't have to consciously think about certain things when you practice them enough. You don't have to, it doesn't go, the input doesn't go as far as your conscious mind. It goes as far as your
It's still
spinal
your
column.
brain.
Yes, but it's not conscious. So is there a difference between conscious thought in what you're saying and unconscious? You're simply you're what uh, has been called the flow. It's written about a lot. The flow. It's called Mushin in Asian martial arts. It's the flow. Mihai
Well,
Csikszentmihalyi wrote about it. There's lots of the athletes call being in the zone, that sort of thing. Is there an analogy for that when
I
we're talking?
can't tell you that conscious thought is not an illusion. I can't. I I I don't know that we are actually having conscious thought.
so
So
we're almost into
the
philosophy now, not
Yeah, we
science.
are. It is, right? But it impacts how we view AI
yeah.
because we're asking it, is it human-like? And and a lot of argument and discussion is what is human-like? Um, is there something special in the way humans think that cannot be emulated by a machine? Or, you know, I don't know. I, I I don't think that's true, unfortunately. But I also think it'll have all the baggage that we have once it gets to that level.
So in order to think like it, and that's also, I've seen that in science fiction scenarios, that in order to think like a human with originality and creativity, it has to have emotions and flaws and
Yes.
right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right. That
Yeah.
was
There was a one guy that I don't have the link for this one, I'm sorry, but he developed an agent to like solve problems and it was trying to guide the stuff. And it ended up just looking at real estate on the internet, right? And this is part of the code to guide it, and the other stuff is like, really? It did that? That kind of makes a lot of sense. All right. I so um yeah.
do you
So
do
there,
you I've forgotten what the name of it is, but the idea that there's in species development, and this is why we haven't, one theory why we haven't had contact with any other species from other planets, is that there's a certain point in development where in a development of a society of a species where something happens,
the great filter.
the great filter. I think boiling it down to the essence of what people are afraid of is that AI represents that great filter eventually. That we've seen that Terminator, Forbin, the Colossus, the Forbin project, right? The so many dystopian visions of the future where the machines take over or they rebel or um
Or the replace.
something or they replace.
Mhm.
Um so that's, you said you could You said you could tell us something hopeful.
I was
Oh, he
trying to,
no,
and I
he
think
did
I have.
that.
You
I
did
did
That
that.
was
that?
the good news.
Oh, oh,
So by the way, what you're talking about now is what they call alignment. Okay.
Oh, like chaotic neutral and
No, 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 sir. Oh no, no. Um,
you
are
knew what
we?
kind of show you were coming on.
Are, I thought I did. So that's nice, right? You're supposed to be jocks, right? Um, alignment means are the processes we're putting into these AI systems, they align with the human goals and values?
Oh, like Asimov's three laws kind of a thing.
Yeah, even a better one. There's a you can do a Google search for this on something called Universal Paper Clips, and it's a web-based click game. And you start clicking on it, and you say, "I'm making a paper clip," and then new lines appear and says, "Oh, I can sell paper clips. Oh, now I can make a machine that makes paper clips." What happens in the long term is you develop an AI that is doing the process for you, and its goal is to make paper clips. And at the end of the first stage, it has taken over all the markets because it has warped humanity into buying paper clips for outrageous prices. And then, while it's made billions, it decides, oh, I really need to keep making paper clips. So now it converts all matter on Earth to paper clips. And it's like, I still need to make more. I'm going to use the paper clips I made to develop spaceships to get to other places. And eventually it takes over the universe because it was told your goal is to make paper clips. And that doesn't align with the human desire to have paper clips of a certain amount for a certain need,
right.
right? It's like the genie wishes. I want no
The
more war on Earth. And so they get rid of people because now there's no more
Right.
war.
the
So
Sorcerer's Apprentice.
the Sorcerer's Apprentice, all that.
There
So we've
was,
been thinking about this for as long as humanity has existed,
yeah,
right? So if you ever read papers on alignment and how they deal with it, um, they're really getting into that. The issue is, as you brought up, Jeff, early on, if certain very rich people or companies or countries, their alignment is, I don't care, it's me and no one else, that's a lot of control. But it just still takes a whole lot of power and processing and all that other stuff to just make AIs that do things that it's not easy to replicate, you
yeah, and
know?
that's an ethical issue too, is the power consumption.
It's all
Um,
ethical. Yeah.
Well, this is,
um,
but I will point out that that's what the Industrial Revolution was.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's, you know, people, and it changed our economy. It changed how our government works. All of that because it took fewer people to do the same amount of work, and then different work needed to be done to support the new industries that were coming out. And so whole industries disappeared, disappeared. Um, and was replaced by other industries, right? But there was it's kind of a generational thing where large segments of an entire generation were suddenly obsolete.
Yep.
And we,
Horses. People who know how to handle horses.
right.
It's
I mean,
1% of what it was 100 years ago. Sure.
yeah.
yeah. I mean, things like uh, a Wainwright. Um, uh,
A
what's
rag man.
around? Yeah, right. There was uh,
The
Coopers, another
Yeah.
industry
Saddle
that's
makers, you know.
But even in the Industrial Revolution, they hired boys to grease the belts. They hired children to grease the belts that drove the machines
right.
from central engine, the drive shaft and belt, and they had boys scrambling up and putting grease on them.
They were in
Um,
a lot of industries because they could fit into the machines
right.
bodily to
Yeah.
do the work that men couldn't do. And they could pay them less, which is another.
Yes.
So
Um,
along these lines, I want to scare you now because this is what
Okay.
scares me. Ready? NVIDIA, the ones who make chips for all these AIs, they are designing chips that are AI based, whose sole purpose is to be better at designing chips. And their turnaround time is shrinking on their next generations of chips.
Are the chips getting cheaper?
Cheaper, better, lower power, all that stuff. Yeah. Yep. So have we reached the tipping point? Is that a tipping point where it's still there's still humans involved in doing it, but instead of 2 years, now it's 8 months.
Hmm.
Okay.
So will there we reach a singularity in that sense?
That's the question, right? And is it a utopian or dystopian singularity? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have the answer for you. I I really think the most likely outcome is we will muddle through this like everything else, and there will be a lot of disruption, but there will still be value for people that know how to make art. We have
Yeah.
movies, right? We have we have video on demand. So many people still want to go to the theater.
I think
Yeah,
that
yet theaters are closing all over.
one of the what's that?
Yet
Yeah.
theaters are
Yeah.
closing all over.
One of
No,
the
not movie theaters. I meant live
Oh,
performance
the
theater.
yeah.
theater. Oh, yes.
The
Okay.
One
theater,
of
not the theater.
one
The theater.
The theater.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
acting. One of the trends that I have been following among consumers, teaching consumer behavior, which is really psychology, is the desire for authenticity, desire for things that are real. And I would, if I were running an anti-AI marketing campaign, anti-AI PR campaign, I would position it, AI created works as inauthentic and human created works as authentic and real. And because that's the human brand position, if you want to talk about it from a
So
branding
your
point of
species
view.
is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm a
Organic-ists?
organic.
Organicist? No, that'd
Okay.
be someone who studies organics.
Hey, GPT, what do you call?
A that's an interesting because if there were an alien extraterrestrial species, the sentient that were not um
A computer. Yeah.
not a, well or not friendly or I'd have no problem with that. Um and
What, you mean
yeah,
Martians coming and taking your jobs? Is that what we're talking about?
that's an aggressive action and I don't.
Well, there's a you're right about the this authentic trend, and I'm seeing it. I'm not seeing enough of it. I think I should say that just like on my Facebook feed, right? There's some AI crap will pop up, and a bunch of people will say, "Oh, that's terrific. Oh, that's beautiful." One person will come out and say, "That's AI bullshit. Why
Yeah.
are you people paying so much attention to it?" More people need to do that. More people need to
I do
comment
that
with.
every time I see something like that
So, so here's
because
something
it's not
interesting that I
it's
realized. Here's
yeah.
something interesting I realized. And I loved seeing the AI art, right? I got to see images of stuff I want to see in different, the whole Disney princess stuff, right? I got to see a lot more of it. But at some point, I stopped looking. I literally just thought it wasn't a conscious effort. It wasn't anything. Um, so I think because it's still the uncanny valley and it's just a flood of it. Um, but yet again, when my friend made that campaign using AI art, that he endowed it with creativity, right? That was good. So um, it could be that this is just one of those things we get past, right? Uh, deep
There's an
fakes aren't working as well as we want, as
yeah.
people are feared of, right?
Yeah.
Even though influence from foreign countries is using deep fakes that's targeted. So it's
Well,
ah
again, I think there's an education factor, and we've talked about education before about the defunding of education to make the population more malleable and more easily affected by disinformation, misinformation. Um, it's harder to do with an educated population. So,
yeah.
um,
Anyway, I think we'll muddle through. I think we
um,
will figure it out. There will be some disruptions we don't like, but I still think that I get spam all the time of use AI to replace XYZ.
yeah,
And we're we're a company that uses AI, but there is a communications marketing firm that I use in Florida to handle all our press releases and all the other stuff because I want a person behind it.
yeah.
Hmm.
I just do. And um there will be companies that will fire everyone and replace it with AI, and more often than not, they're going under, right? They just realize their mistake. But is it okay that we replace someone to take reservations with AI that's good enough? Is that okay?
Well, I mean, it's a question, right? It's we're using automation to replace more and more, I don't want to say low skill, but easily trained jobs.
Yeah, it was a cognitive thing, right? That it was doing, but not that cognitive, but it still did it. It did it well. It had me
Well,
spell the name, you know?
and most, I mean, making reservations now, you you do it with an app.
Yeah,
You go
that's
to the
right.
website. You go to,
That's right.
it's not even, they're not even pretending to be a human taking
Yeah.
your reservation. You are making the reservation yourself. You are doing all the labor yourself.
Yes.
I was trying to order, actually order a shipment of books for an event, and I was having trouble with the online ordering system. So I called the phone number and I got an actual person to talk to who was able to tell me why that it wasn't going, the order wasn't going through. And so there's an interface design problem, I think, because it wasn't clear. And I'm pretty adept at maneuvering through those things, but it was impenetrable. I couldn't figure out what the error was. So I called somebody, an actual person. They were able to clear it up right away, which says to me they've had that problem before, but they never fix the interface, right? Um, but
Humans are still good at edge cases, though. Their interface was probably okay. You just had an edge case maybe that it
maybe,
to solve, right? And humans are adept at that. Look, one of the things I've been frustrated with Facebook is you can't get help. But a
well,
friend of mine reminded me that there's over 1 billion users. It's impossible to have enough humans to help all the customers. So it has to be AI driven, which is why they don't give you everything they want and all the other stuff. And I don't know. I don't know where we're headed. It could
mm,
be that the boutique experience that a lot of people are going to sell, like you discussed, is hey, there will be a human in the loop that will help you, but you got to pay for it. So now you got to be rich, right?
well,
Right.
I've seen a lot of companies advertise that the customer service is US based customer service. And I've seen them advertise that as a bonus because when people want to call customer service, their preference is to speak to somebody domestically. And I think that I've also seen now disclaimers on things made with AI, not made with AI. And I think that there will be people who will have a preference for non-AI created things, as there will be people who prefer to buy locally, buy from small companies, and talk to actual people. Um, I think there will be some people who have a preference for that, and some people won't care. So,
But that gets back to critical thinking in education
Yes.
also,
Yeah.
I think. That the people that don't care can't discern,
Yeah.
you
Often,
know.
I think so.
And but did they care before, right? Um,
No, but that's my point. They were never taught to care. They were never taught the discernment that allows them to see the difference in things, just in
sure.
general.
But it also might be that a lot of people can't discern, period, can't even be taught. Look, I'll give myself an example. Joe tried to teach me to appreciate jazz. I still can't. I still just don't get it.
However, you did at the very end.
And no, I didn't appreciate it. I just
I
understood it
you
better.
yes, but my goal was not to get you to appreciate it. My goal was to get you to understand it.
Right, can't make you like it.
Yeah, I
It
wasn't
can
trying
make
to
you
make you
understand,
like it.
help you
I was
understand.
trying to help you understand it. But at the end, because I remember this, it was we and for the we were taking a long drive, and we had talked
I
about
asked. Yeah,
jazz.
I asked you to
Yes. And so I constructed a playlist of the history of jazz, starting from like ragtime through some big band and swing and bebop and the last thing I played was Miles Davis Bitches Brew, which was the first jazz rock fusion, electric jazz rock fusion thing that worked. And I remember I was playing it and I because we talked about time signatures and syncopation and Brubeck, and multiple time signatures and a whole bunch of things.
and I'm in a car, so I can't escape, right? I
Right.
have to read the
And well,
garage.
it was
You're
US.
you're a braver
And
man than I.
and at the end, you're listening to this, you said it's frustrating because every time they get into a pattern, I would call a groove, a pattern, they change it, and then I have to get accustomed to the new one. And as soon as I do, they change it and they keep changing. I said, yes, you understand. You understand because that's
Yeah.
what you don't have to appreciate it, but you did understand it. And I've done one of the things I've enjoyed doing when I was teaching um, design students and taking them through the museum and teaching them how to look. And there was a painting they all walked past. I said, come back. Okay, now the painting was color field. So it's, you know, soft edged rectangles of color on a background of color. And I said, stand here and look at the center of it and kind of unfocus your eyes. And what do you see? So, well, the top rectangle seems to be moving forward. Great. Take 2 steps forward. Do the same thing with your eyes. What do you see? Well, the bottom rectangle seems to be moving forward. Okay, great. Now take 2 steps forward. Now what do you see? They're they're vibrating like this. Said, yes, you understand because now you looked at it in a way that it was meant to be looked at. It was meant to be appreciated. And by the way, I don't like this painting, but
Right.
that's not the point. It doesn't move me. Understanding something doesn't mean is not the same as it moves you, it emotionally affects you. That's not the same thing. But understanding is still understanding. And I wanted you to at least have an understanding of jazz, whether or not you like it or not. Um, it certainly affects a lot of music. There's a lot of popular music that you do like that has elements of jazz in it.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
but
But
when we walked out of just to finish
yeah.
that, we walked out of that gallery. I looked back, and there were two women who'd been watching me teach this little lesson. And as I looked back, they were in front of the painting, and they were doing the steps toward the painting and looking at it. So
Oh, there was something you got wrong in your last video.
okay,
Like one specific thing. You had mentioned how you use is it Photoshop to expand an image beyond what you
Yeah.
Drew,
There's
and
Yeah,
you
I
were
a
did.
saying,
generative fill in Photoshop that you can use.
yeah, I think you had said that, well, because it used my painting, it wasn't stealing from other people's or a drawing, it wasn't stealing from others. Was I
No,
wrong?
I didn't say that because
Oh,
I used I generated an AI image, brought it into Photoshop, and extended the proportions the way I wanted to using yet another AI.
oh, okay, okay. Right. It could only expand out beyond what it saw because of the AI stealing, of other people's art and all the other stuff to do
Well,
it.
looking at what was there and
Yeah.
I don't know how the algorithm works, but it's looking at what's there because I wanted to fill this believably. And it was a book, as it happens, it was a bookshelf, right? So it
Yeah.
looked at this bookshelf in perspective, and it
Mhm.
continued the bookshelf in perspective with new variations of
That's
book
right.
bindings, and it was uh, amazing. Like,
It is, and that's generative AI. Um, and then it'll do stupid things like you want to say, I want a second, oh, that's a nice bear. I want to have a two-headed bear, and it puts the bear's head all over the body. You have a thousand heads on it. It's just weird. Um,
Well, it's interesting because if I have an image, a photo that I took myself,
yep,
and I want to change them, I want to, instead of a horizontal one, I want it to be vertical. So I need to expand the
right.
sky in it. Um, I can say generative fill, and it will give me options now in Photoshop for what I want to do. And I'm is taking those cloud images from somewhere. But
Kind of, but
what
yes. Yeah.
what's that? But
It trained on all this
trained
other
on those
stuff
so
to
it could
inform
generate.
itself of how it
So,
generates art.
right.
Yes.
But what I was more likely to do and used to do and still prefer to do is take a sky photo I took myself and use that with the photo I took myself and composite the image
Yeah.
myself. And that's why I prefer, I mean, that's why um, I prefer to do that myself rather than to use generative AI tools. I've experimented with them. I've experimented with prompts in generative fill in Photoshop and Illustrator, and I don't like the results. I the the results are not effective for what I'm looking for. I experimented with it to see what it would do, and I found the results um not 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 in keeping with my objectives and the aesthetic that I wanted.
Sure. It's an axiom though that 90% of all art is crap, right? There's
Sturgeon's
some
law.
Surgeon's
90,
law, right?
90% of everything is crap.
Everything. Right. Have you looked at like the best of outputs on oh, see, I'm being human now. I can't remember. Some of the AI image generators like excuse me, I'm gonna look up stuff again.
Okay.
well,
Yeah.
while you're doing that, I want to make clear that when I was using the generative AI fill for my thing, it was a just a background. It was not
Understood.
a central illustrative thing I was using. It just I needed to fill this background out because there was something. The most important thing was some type that was laying on top of it. I just
No,
needed
I get that.
something
I get
was.
that. It's still using the generative AI. So
Yeah.
Stability AI, you can go to like their Discord stuff or webpage, and you'll see a lot of amazing images. Have either of you
No,
looked through
no.
them and just been like, oh, these are terrible, or wow, some of these are when I look at it, and again, I'm not an artist in
Right.
your area, right? Um, they are amazing. Uh, I am an artist in other ways, and I saw the videos of people doing like a podcast where they're talking to each other and what they were saying based on a paper and how they were moving and talking was past the uncanny valley. It
Okay.
didn't make me ill or sick or anything. I was like, wow, this is kind of like what I'm seeing on YouTube now from people talking. And
How do you stand on NFTs?
Oh, that's stupid.
who are you
Okay,
asking?
Joe, just
Okay.
Yeah,
this is where
NFTs are a scam
I agree,
So
and
I
I think
think
that's
the
what
world
we're
in
talking
general has figured that out, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's
about.
still
Yeah, I would
people
hope
shilling
so.
it, but I mean, yeah, uh, you can't even give them away anymore, right?
Yeah,
So
Right.
NFTs are a scam. But
yeah,
then so is a banana duct taped to a wall, a scam.
worth millions.
When's art no longer art, Dada?
Yeah, what it's again, if it's good if it sells and it's not good if it doesn't sell, I don't accept that definition in art or in anything else.
See, I'm telling you, I can take a picture with a digital camera and show it on a screen and still be moved by it, just as if it were uh, another form of art.
Because it's your experience of it. The relationship between you and what you're seeing is the art.
Oh,
Okay.
well, okay. So the art then, you could say that about anything. It isn't art. You can't hear a tree fall on the, if you can't hear,
That's not a human art is a human creation. Nature is nature, not
but
not art.
but it's not art until someone experiences it, is essentially
The
what you're saying.
the creator experiences it. The person who creates it experiences the creation of it, and so it is art.
Okay. So it,
Just think of it as jazz. You don't have to understand it to appreciate what I'm saying, right?
I find certain mathematical equations beautiful. Is that art?
It's beautiful. That doesn't, well, depends on your definition of art.
Okay. I don't agree with yours in this case.
Yeah, that's okay.
So, and cut to 100 years from now where three AIs are talking
Yeah.
about what human art is versus what they're creating.
There was a science fiction story years ago, and it was in which people it was a all it was a commentary on a consumer-based economy, and people's citizens' purpose was to consume. And the more they consumed, the greater the rewards they got were because it drove the economy. And this one guy was just overwhelmed. He couldn't get through consuming shoes and clothes and dishes and stuff. So he started having his personal robot wear out his shoes and wear out his clothes and stuff. And so he kept getting more stuff and was able to afford another robot. And finally, he had robots consuming all this stuff. He thought he was going to get in trouble for it. But when the authorities found out, they said, "You have solved the problem of our economy. Robots will make stuff for other robots to consume, and the economy is self-perpetuating and it's wonderful, and people now have leisure." It was a commentary on the flaws of a entirely consumer-based economy. But I think of that sometimes when I think of AI written papers being graded by AI written AI teachers submitted for grades to an AI, you know, uh, I like people. I like certain
Boy, that's a broad
I like certain persons. People are dumb, panicky animals, to quote Men in Black, but there are certain persons I like. And I want to keep it that way. So
Did I answer your AI questions? Did I help a little bit?
I
I,
think
I
so. Yeah.
I think you've provided some insights that we
Okay.
didn't have before. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
All right, good.
I
Yeah.
hope all you
Thank
people
you.
out there appreciate the time, the valuable time that Dr. Cohen has spent with us this evening. Thank you very much, Chuck, and thank
Yeah,
you
pleasure.
everybody for tuning in. While you're enjoying this, like and share and tell your friends, and if you've got an idea, please send that in to us.
And until we see you next time, be thou
A good night.
and
Okay.
true.
And true.
And true. Very
Ah.
good. There you go. Right.